Retired cowboy Eli Maddox had lived so long under the blistered sun of New Mexico that the desert wind knew his name better than any living soul, and the horses on his ranch understood his moods before he ever spoke. He was a man of few words, hardened by decades on the cattle trails and silent nights beneath stars that looked like God scattered glass shards across the heavens. And after the death of his wife, Clara, there was nothing left in him but the sounds of old boots dragging across dry planks, the creak of his rocking chair on the porch of Sundance Ranch, and the whispers of broken memories that refuse to be buried, because grief, like the dust, slips under doors, settles in lungs, and never quite leaves, no matter how many sunsets pass in front of your eyes. So Eli withdrew from the world, from the cattlemen he once rode with, from the whiskey halls and poker tables, from the church ladies who kept telling him time would heal, because time had done nothing but beat him down like the hoof of an angry stallion, leaving him old, alone, and resigned to die quietly on his land, a ghost in a hat too large for the bones beneath it, until the day he heard a knock on the weather-warped door just before dusk, and 5 silhouettes stood behind it, Apache widows wrapped in deep shawls, faces carved not by age but by sorrow and sandstorms, their eyes carrying the last flames of long-extinguished fires, their leader a tall woman named Ayanna, speaking words that made the old cowboy's heart stumble. "We beg shelter, even if only for one night. The world has turned cruel, and there is nowhere left for us but the wind." And Eli stared at them, confused, for he had not spoken to people in weeks, perhaps months, and had never been asked for mercy, because mercy was a luxury in the wild lands, traded only by fools or saints, neither of which he imagined himself to be. And yet something in their posture, in the way they leaned together, shoulder to shoulder like a herd protecting its weakest, spoke to the last humane shred buried deep in him. So he stepped aside, and the women entered with slow steps, the boots of the youngest brushing the floor, timidly, while the oldest kept her chin high as if daring the world to strike again. And Eli did not ask names, not yet, merely lit the oil lamps, their amber glow chasing shadows from the walls, revealing the harsh truth etched across each Apache widow's face, the kind of grief you don't get from accident or illness, but from men wearing badges or holsters, from soldiers who came in the name of order, law, expansion, freedom, words that always seemed to mean someone would suffer, someone would bleed, someone would lose everything. And though Eli never took part in the atrocities of the frontier wars, he rode cattle through lands where the tribe blood was still drying in river creeks, and the guilt of surviving is heavier than a saddle full of gold. So when he cleared his throat and offered them water and hard bread, he did not do it as a savior but as a man, trying to patch an invisible wound he had never known how to close. And the widows accepted silently, gathering around the long kitchen table like a circle of fallen angels. Ayanna finally speaking again, explaining in a voice that seemed both iron and ember that soldiers from the fort at Silver Mesa had raided their reservation after claiming someone among the tribe shot a supply officer along the wagon road, a lie they all recognized instantly because tribespeople had no reason to provoke the army when the reservation rations were already scarce, and the widows' husbands, hunters, shepherds, men hardened by the unforgiving land, stood in the soldiers' way, refusing to let wives and children be taken, which led to the army turning the camp to ash, taking captives, and executing the 5 men who dared to resist, each shot and left face down in the red dirt like criminals. And the widows barely escaped on horseback, chased for miles by cavalry until the horses collapsed from exhaustion near the river, where they hid among reeds until the riders gave up the hunt. And Eli listened, hand trembling around the cup of bitter coffee he could barely swallow. For he had seen soldiers take Apache men before, seen vigilantes brand them savages, seen women cry until voices cracked, and he remembered a day long ago when he helped bury a young Apache warrior who had been shot, trying to protect his mother from cattle rustlers. Eli dug the grave himself with no one else brave enough to touch a native corpse, and that memory now burned back into him like a branding iron. As Ayanna paused, letting silence fill the house, letting him understand the gravity of what they asked. They needed more than shelter, they needed safety, a place to rebuild. A new beginning, or at least a pause from the nightmare that hunted them. And Eli felt the rattling of his dead heart as he leaned forward, the lamp glow reflecting in his clouded eyes, and he thought of Clara, of the way she once looked at him before their home was empty of laughter, and she would have opened the door, would have invited these women inside, would have cooked them a meal, even if the pantry was bare, because she believed the land belonged to its first people, and because she believed hospitality was the last law of the frontier, the only one that could tame the darkness that lived in men. So Eli whispered the words he had not spoken to strangers in so long, that they felt foreign on his lips. Stay as long as you need. And at that, the youngest of the widows, a girl barely 20, exhaled a shuddering breath, tears gathering on her lashes like dew on cactus needles. Ayanna nodding solemnly before thanking him, bowing her head in gratitude. And though he did not fully understand the weight of what he had just committed to, the retired cowboy felt something shift in him, like a door opening inside a mansion no one had walked in for years. And outside, coyotes howled,